All right, welcome back. Today, we're jumping into something that's, one of the most powerful tools a designer has, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. I'm talking about white space. We're going to completely flip our thinking here from just, cramming every pixel with something to creating real clarity in our designs. So, yeah, let's get into it.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever, finished a design, you step back, you look at it, and you just think, wow, that is a lot. It just feels dense, right? Like this wall of information that's kind of overwhelming to even look at? Well, if that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. It's a super common problem for new designers. And the secret isn't to add more stuff. It's all about what you remove.
Yeah, and this quote, it just nails it. White space is not empty. It's not a void. It's actually an active part of your design. Think of it like invisible architecture. It's what tells your eye where to go, what to focus on. It's what gives all your important content room to actually breathe and, well, do its job.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we need to know there are two main types. First, you've got macro white space. That's the big stuff, right? The space between your major sections, like your header and your body text, or between columns. It's the landscape of your page. Then there's micro white space. This is all the small, detailed stuff. The space between lines of text, between paragraphs, even between individual letters. This is what makes text actually readable and not a total chore. And you absolutely need both.
So, why do we care so much about this? Well, it all boils down to this concept called cognitive load. Fancy term, but it's simple. It's just the amount of brain power someone has to use to figure out your design. And when a design is cluttered, you're literally forcing your users to waste their mental energy just trying to make sense of the chaos instead of actually, getting your message. Good white space, it's like a filter. It just makes everything feel easy and effortless.
All right, let's get into the weeds a bit. We're going to look at some of the most common traps designers fall into that create all this clutter. Because honestly, sometimes the best way to learn what to do is to first understand what not to do.
Okay, mistake number one. I like to call this the cluttered jungle. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's when you just cram everything together, shoulder to shoulder, trying to fill up every last pixel. It's a classic case of fear of empty space. And what you end up with is an interface that just feels suffocating. It's dense, it's overwhelming, and honestly, it's just claustrophobic for the user.
And the damage this does? It's huge. Users get hit with all this visual noise and they're just paralyzed. So what do? They leave. Bam, that's your bounce rate shooting up. And what's worse, all that clutter actually makes your content seem less important, less credible. From a business angle, this is a disaster. Your most important buttons, your key messages, they're just lost in the noise. Say goodbye to your conversion rates.
All right, trap number two is what I call the unpredictable path. This is all about inconsistency. It's when your spacing is just random. A button might have 20 pixels of space around it on one page, but on the next page, for no good reason, it has 24. These little things might seem minor, but they add up, and they create a really jarring, unpredictable experience for the user.
See, our brains are hardwired to look for patterns. We love them. So when you break those patterns for no reason, it creates this subtle friction. The user might not be able to put their finger on it, but they just get this feeling that something is off, or that the site is kind of sloppy or poorly built. And that kills trust. And hey, for any developers listening, you know what this leads to. A nightmare of messy code with a million little one-off fixes.
Okay, let's zoom way in now, from the big picture down to the tiny details. A massive mistake is forgetting about the space inside your text. I'm talking about your line height, the spacing between letters, the gaps between paragraphs. When you squish all that text together, it just becomes this big, scary, unreadable wall of words.
And get this, studies have actually shown that just by giving your text enough breathing room, proper line height and all that, you can improve reading comprehension by up to 20%. That is a huge, huge win for such a tiny, simple change. It makes it easier on the eyes and just makes your content feel, well, way more inviting to actually read. All right, this next mistake is a classic Design 101 error, ignoring the law of proximity. It's a fundamental principle that just says our brains automatically assume that things placed close together belong together. And when you ignore this, you create total confusion. The classic example, a label for a form field that's sitting smack in the middle of two input boxes. Like, which one is it for? You've just created unnecessary work for the user. And I love this analogy of the shepherd. It just makes so much sense. To show who he belongs with, the shepherd stands right next to his sheep, not halfway across the field.
Whitespace is your tool for doing exactly that in your designs. You use it to pull related things together into tight little groups, and you use it to push unrelated things far apart. It's all about creating clear, obvious relationships. Okay, this one can literally cost you money. I call it the camouflaged action. This is when your most important button, your buy now, your sign up, whatever it is just buried. It's crowded by other stuff, fighting for attention with headlines, images, you name it. It's basically camouflaged in the middle of the jungle we talked about earlier. And the result here is pretty simple and pretty brutal. If users can't find the button easily, they're not going to click it. End of story. This actually violates a core UI principle called Fitts Law. All that means is that it's harder and takes longer to click on a target when it's small or surrounded by a bunch of other junk. By crowding your button, you're making it a more difficult target to hit. Okay, enough doom and gloom. We've seen all the ways things can go wrong. So how do we fix it? How do we get from that chaos to real clarity? Well, the secret is to stop guessing and start being systematic. The big fix here is to stop making it up as you go along and to actually use a system. It's really just 3 simple steps. First, define your rules. Pick a base unit like 8 pixels and build a consistent grid from it. This becomes your one source of truth for all spacing. No more random numbers. Second, give those rules names. In code, we call these spacing tokens. You create variables like space medium, which might equal 16 pixels. This makes everything so much easier to manage. And third, and this is the most important part, you have to be consistent. You use this system for everything. Every margin, every padding, no exceptions. That's how you get that clean, predictable rhythm in your design.
And what's cool is that this whole system isn't just arbitrary. It's backed by real psychology. You're using the law of proximity to create those logical groups we talked about. You're using something called Hicks' law, which basically says the more choices you give someone, the longer it takes them to decide, to simplify everything. And you're using Fitts' law to make sure your most important buttons are big, obvious targets that are super easy to hit. This isn't just making things look pretty. It's designing with a real human-centered purpose.
So when it comes right down to it, getting good at whitespace is really about a massive shift in how you think. You're not just a decorator filling a blank canvas anymore. You're an architect, and you're carefully shaping an entire environment for your user.
So that means instead of freaking out about filling every single pixel, your new job is to create a clear visual hierarchy. Instead of just picking random spacing values, you're building a consistent, predictable rhythm. And instead of just cramming things together, you're strategically using empty space to guide the user's eye exactly where you want it to go. See, you're an architect of information, not just a painter.
But here's a key thing to remember. The goal is not just to make things empty for the sake of it. Too much white space can be just as bad, making everything feel disconnected, like a barren desert. What you're really aiming for is balance. I love the analogy of a well-kept garden. It's not empty, right? It's a place where every plant has its own space to grow, and the paths guiding you through it are clear and easy to follow. That's what we want.
So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. At the end of the day, your content, your words, your images, your product, that's the real star of the show. And whitespace, well, that's the stage you build for it. So the real question you have to ask yourself is, are you giving your star the spotlight it actually deserves?